Warning! This show contains truth, sarcasm, and opinions that might offend the fragile, the fake, and the fact-free. If you're easily triggered, still wearing a mask alone in your car, or think CNN is mostly reliable, this ain't your safe space. We don't do censorship, we don't do narrative-approved talking points, and we sure as hell don't do the government's version of the truth. So grab your coffee, buckle up, and prepare to enter the blast radius of reality.
The government shutdown drags into its third week. Federal workers are panicking over missing paychecks, and President Trump just made it clear. There's no guarantee they'll get back pay this time. Meanwhile, down south, American warships took out Venezuelan drug boats in the Caribbean, and the administration is officially labeling cartel operations as combatant threats. And if that wasn't enough, Portland's at it again. Protests, chaos, arrests, and now, federal troops in the streets. Welcome to the middle of October, folks. Where politics meets chaos and peaceful protest looks like a war zone. All right, let's bring in the crew before Brian's blood pressure hits Fox News alert levels. First up, Brian, the man who treats every political argument like it's a UFC main event and every liberal like they just insulted his truck. He's got caffeine in his veins, MAGA on his sleeve, and zero patience for stupid. Then there's Rachel, our voice of reason, which, let's be honest, is like being the designated driver in a demolition derby. She's the one who reminds us that facts matter, even when they ruin Brian's punchlines. Daniel, our in-house conspiracy sommelier. He doesn't believe in coincidences, but he's personally met 3 different people named Deep State Dave. He's probably tracking this broadcast through 4 VPNs right now. And finally, Skylar, our resident progressive idealist who still thinks government can fix things. Bless her heart. She's the kind of person who brings a tote bag to a gunfight and somehow still wins the moral argument. Together, they form the Chaos Quartet. I just hold the mic and try to keep the studio from catching fire. Buckle up, folks. This isn't CNN. This is Data and Dissonance. Week 2 of the shutdown, and Washington's already acting like it's week 10. Paychecks are frozen, tempers are boiling, and the White House's Office of Management and Budget dropped a memo saying, quote, "Back pay is not automatic." That's a sharp turn from the 2019 law that was supposed to guarantee retroactive pay after every lapse. OPM's guidance still says workers will be paid once Congress passes a bill. But OMB's memo basically says, don't count on it. So the question is, smart leverage or political malpractice? Brian, is making back pay not automatic a smart way to force Congress to act? Or a bad faith move that punishes workers who didn't cause the shutdown?
I'll tell you what, Artie. This is what happens when Washington gets too comfortable. They call it a shutdown, but nobody actually shuts down. Every time the same people get a free paid vacation and the taxpayers eat the bill. Trump's saying, not this time. No work, no pay. Just like every normal job in America. You want your paycheck? Get your congressman to open the government.
Yeah, Brian, but try telling that to the guy working TSA in Denver with 2 kids and a mortgage. Sorry, pal, no rent until McCarthy and Schumer hug it out. That's not leverage, that's a panic attack with paperwork.
Maybe, but fear's a motivator. Congress won't move till people feel it.
Except the law's already settled. The Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019 says furloughed employees will get retro pay once funding resumes. OMB's memo conflicts with that. It's like the administration's trying to rewrite statute through a press release. And legally, OPM's guidance carries the weight here. They're the personnel agency.
So what you're saying, Rachel, is OMB's playing lawyer and the actual lawyers are somewhere screaming into a pillow.
Pretty much. And the longer it drags on, the more it undermines confidence in both agencies.
Oh, come on. You guys think this is about paychecks? It's about power. The memo's a stress test. How far can the executive branch stretch the purse strings before Congress snaps back? They did the same thing in 2018 with border funds. Now, they're testing the shutdown statute. When the dust settles, there'll be new language quietly slipped into the refunding bill, expanding executive flexibility. Watch for it.
Translation for the normal folks at home. Daniel thinks there's a secret paragraph somewhere that turns the OMB memo into a Bond villain plot.
Hey, history keeps proving me right, brother.
Meanwhile, people are missing paychecks. Every time the government uses workers as pawns, it's the same story. We could debate budgets forever, but moving the goalposts mid-shutdown is just cruel. Accountability shouldn't mean economic whiplash for families living paycheck to paycheck.
True, but Skylar, you gotta admit, some of those families are agencies with 50 employees and 30 managers. At some point, trimming fat isn't cruelty. It's cardio for the bureaucracy.
Tell that to the janitors at the Smithsonian, Artie.
Fair? I'll buy him a coffee if Congress ever clocks back in. Here's the truth. The 2019 law still says back pay's guaranteed. OPM agrees. And OMB's trying to play hardball without the bat. Whether it's strategy or stunt, it's already confusing workers and rattling families. The swamp feeds on uncertainty. And this memo just dumped another barrel of it. While DC argues about paychecks, the Navy's firing missiles. Over the weekend, U.S. forces in the Caribbean struck 3 Venezuelan boats allegedly moving weapons and fentanyl precursors. The Pentagon says they were cartel-linked smuggling vessels operating under Venezuela's military protection. The White House followed up with a legal notice to Congress designating transnational criminal cartels as non-state combatant entities. In plain English, the United States just gave itself wartime authority against drug traffickers. Supporters call it decisive. Critics say it's a legal grenade that could blow a hole in international law. So the question tonight, is this a necessary escalation or the start of a shadow war with no finish line?
Finally, somebody's doing something besides holding press conferences. These cartels have been invading us for decades. They're organized armies with submarines and drones. Treating them like criminals was the mistake. You run drugs that kill Americans, you're a combatant, not a defendant. Trump just called their bluff. Boom.
You're saying boom, literally and metaphorically, huh? Careful, Brian. CNN's already drafting headlines about you cheering drone strikes on fishing boats.
If they're fishing for fentanyl, brother.
I agree cartels are a threat, but legally this move opens a can of worms. Declaring non-state actors combatants triggers the law of armed conflict, which means the U.S. assumes obligations normally reserved for wars between nations. Once you militarize a law enforcement problem, you own the collateral damage and diplomatic fallout. Venezuela's already protesting the violation of its territorial waters.
So we've gone from war on drugs to an actual war with drugs?
Pretty much. And every lawyer in the Pentagon just got a migraine.
Look deeper. This isn't just about narcos. It's about BRICS. Venezuela's oil and Chinese investment make it the soft underbelly of that alliance. The strikes were timed right after Beijing and Caracas signed a trade security pact. Labeling cartels combatants gives Trump legal cover to target any BRICS-aligned shipment he wants under counter-narcotics. It's economic warfare in camo.
So, to you, Daniel, everything's 4D chess and BRICS is the board.
Tell me I'm wrong when the next cartel raid happens near a Chinese-funded port.
Fair, and probably televised.
This is reckless. Bombing boats doesn't solve addiction. It just adds body counts. You can't drone strike poverty or desperation. Every time we call something a war, we justify endless spending and no accountability. I'm all for stopping traffickers, but this feels like another forever war waiting to happen.
You're not wrong, Skylar. America's track record on wars with no exit plan is longer than Biden's teleprompter.
Exactly. Maybe we try diplomacy before depth charges.
Here's where it gets tricky. The cartels really are armed networks flooding our border with poison. But redefining them as combatants means the U.S. just blurred the line between cops and soldiers. It's bold, it's risky, and it's a legal minefield. Whether history calls this decisive or disastrous depends on one thing: if those missiles stop the flow or just start the next war. And now, back to everyone's favorite recurring nightmare: Portland. For the fourth time this year, protests have turned violent downtown after the arrest of a local activist accused of assaulting a federal officer. Businesses are boarding up, the mayor's calling for calm, and President Trump just authorized federal troops to assist local law enforcement in restoring order. The administration says it's a targeted deployment, not martial law. The left's crying authoritarian overreach. The right's saying, finally, law and order. So here we are again, a city that keeps setting itself on fire and acting surprised when someone brings a hose. The question tonight, is this justified intervention or another federal overstep waiting to backfire?
I'll say it plain. It's about damn time. Portland's been a punchline since 2020. You've got masked kids throwing Molotovs at cops while the mayor worries about their emotional trauma. If the local government won't protect its citizens, the feds have to. It's not fascism, it's common sense. Trump's sending troops because Oregon officials treat criminals like activists and cops like the enemy.
Yeah, Portland's city motto should just be, "Welcome to the autonomous zone."
Exactly. They've had more occupations than Starbucks locations.
Federal intervention is always messy, though. It solves the short-term chaos but erodes long-term trust. Portland's problems are cultural and political, not military. I get restoring order, but when troops show up in U.S. streets, you normalize that image. Once people get used to seeing soldiers in cities, it stops feeling temporary.
True, but at this point, half of Portland probably wants to be occupied. At least somebody would pick up the trash.
Fair point. I'm just saying, every time we cross that line, it gets easier to cross again.
Look, this is the same pattern every time. Chaos, outrage, deployment, calm, repeat. It's theater. Portland's a test site for federal crowd control tech, surveillance gear, and social engineering. The riots create the excuse, the feds roll out the next generation of drones or AI tracking systems, then everyone moves on until the next crisis. It's not just a city problem, it's a lab experiment in control.
So to recap, Portland's not burning. It's beta testing.
Exactly. And the media's the marketing department.
You all make it sound so simple, but Portland's anger is real. People there are protesting heavy-handed policing, housing costs, corruption. Sending troops doesn't fix the root, it just silences the symptoms. You don't rebuild trust with tear gas. I'm not defending violence, but calling in the army every time citizens yell too loud isn't democracy either.
Skylar, Portland's protests stopped being about housing costs the second someone torched a courthouse. At some point, yelling too loud turns into felony arson.
And at some point, law and order turns into intimidation. Both can be true.
Fair. One just smells more like burnt spray paint. Here's the bottom line. Portland's been caught in a feedback loop for years. Chaos breeds crackdown, crackdown breeds chaos. Trump didn't create that cycle, but he sure as hell isn't afraid to break it with boots if he has to. Whether you call it restoration or repression probably depends on whether you own the business being looted or the camera filming it. Either way, Portland's latest firestorm proves one thing. America's still arguing over where freedom ends and order begins. All right, folks, it's been one hell of a night. From the shutdown drama in D.C. to the missile strikes in the Caribbean to Portland proving once again that chaos is their official city sport. The country feels like it's balancing on the edge of a lit match. But that's why we do this show. Not to add to the noise, but to cut through it. With a little humor, a little heat, and a whole lot of truth. So let's wrap it up the only way we know how. Raw, real, and unfiltered. Panel final thoughts. Let's hit it.
I'll tell you what, Artie. Between the shutdown, the cartel hits, and Portland burning for the 100th time, I'm seeing the same theme. America's soft spots are finally getting pressure tested. And I like it. Sometimes you've got to break a few bureaucracies to remind people who's in charge. Trump's not trying to make everyone comfortable. He's trying to make the country functional again. The left screams dictator. But honestly, I'd settle for someone who can make the damn trains run on time.
I see the pressure too, but it worries me. We're blurring lines that were drawn for a reason. Lines between policy and punishment. between policing and militarization. Government's supposed to protect citizens and its workers, not play chicken with both. The shutdown leverage, the foreign strikes, the troop deployments, it's all reactive. We need a strategy that doesn't rely on chaos to make its point.
Strategy. This is the strategy. Crisis, overreaction, and consolidation. It's the new American cycle. The shutdown teaches dependency. The cartel war expands surveillance, and the Portland chaos justifies it all. We're living in a simulation of freedom. The machine feeds on outrage, and every emergency is another software update. They're not fixing the system, they're upgrading control.
You all talk about control like it's a conspiracy. Maybe it's just exhaustion. People are tired, broke, and angry. You can only stretch a society so far before it snaps. The shutdown hurts families. The strikes risk escalation. The protests show desperation. Everyone's yelling at each other, but nobody's actually listening. Maybe the real collapse isn't in the system. It's in our empathy.
Maybe Skylar's onto something, but here's where I land. This country's not collapsing. It's being stress tested. The shutdown, the strikes, the protests. They're all battlefields in a bigger war for accountability. The government hates losing control. The people hate being ignored, and the media profits off both. Somewhere between Brian's burn it down, Rachel's caution, Daniel's paranoia, and Skylar's compassion. That's the real America. But here's the difference between us and them. We're not afraid to talk about it. We don't silence debate, we sharpen it. So whether it's the swamp in DC, the smoke in Portland, or the cartels in the Caribbean, truth's still worth fighting for, and that's exactly what we'll keep doing. Remember, folks, speak truth, stir thought, and stay ungovernable. Tonight's episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke thriller series. The Covenant Protocol and the Prophet Directive, both available now on Amazon. And while you're there, stock up on your Data and Dissonance coffee blends. High Lakes Light Roast, Rock Creek Medium Roast, and Bitterroot Dark Roast. Roasted in the USA and brewed for thinkers, patriots, and night owls alike. Because weak coffee and weak minds don't mix. That's it for tonight's Drive Time edition of Data and Dissonance. Tomorrow, we're digging into the next round of power plays, political theater, and stories the mainstream won't touch. Until then, keep your coffee strong, your convictions stronger, and remember, freedom's a muscle. Use it.